Donald Trump with a completely overwhelming appearance, mocking ratings, and trying to bend the room to his will. But within minutes, Letterman's calm questions, buried records, and perfectly timed silence shattered Trump's control on live TV, turning the set into a high-stakes showdown that left the audience frozen and the entire nation watching in shock. Donald Trump stepped onto David Letterman's stage like a man walking into territory he believed already belonged to him. The crowd jumped to their feet, clapping loud, but the sound wasn't clean. It cracked with tension, half excitement, half unease. Trump raised one hand slowly, soaking it in, chin up, shoulders wide, wearing the expression of someone who expected applause to turn into obedience. He dropped into the chair with a heavy lean, spreading his arms slightly as if claiming space. Across from him, Letterman didn't move much at all. He leaned back, relaxed, hands resting calmly, eyes fixed on Trump with a quiet, unreadable look. The cameras cut between them, wide shot, already sensing something unstable building in the room. Even before a real question was asked, the energy felt loaded, like a storm waiting for the first crack of thunder. Trump struck first, fast and sharp. "Let's be honest, David," he said with a crooked grin. "Late-night TV isn't what it used to be. Ratings are down, relevance is down. You're not exactly driving the culture anymore." A few people laughed, nervous and scattered, unsure if they were reacting to humor or a warning shot. Trump leaned forward, voice louder now, stacking words aggressively. "People don't tune in to hear old hosts lecture them. They tune in to winners." He smirked, clearly enjoying the jab, watching the crowd for reaction. The laughter thinned out. Some faces froze. Others looked away. The room shifted from playful to tense in seconds, and Trump kept pushing, adding, "You should thank me for being here. This is the biggest moment your show's had in years." The silence after that line hit harder than applause ever could. Letterman finally leaned forward, slow and deliberate, eyes steady, voice calm, but cutting. "You talk a lot about ratings," he said, pausing again, letting the words hang. "But tonight isn't about saving your image. It's about telling the truth." The studio went dead quiet. Trump's smile twitched, just for a second. Trump immediately tried to hijack the conversation the way he always did. Every time Letterman started a question, Trump jumped in halfway through, steering it somewhere else, turning simple topics into long speeches about himself. He mixed jokes with dominance, laughing while talking over the host, patting the desk lightly as if it were his podium. "People don't want complicated answers," he said with a shrug. "They want confidence. They want strength. That's why I win." He didn't wait for a response. He rolled straight into another story, another brag, another distraction. The audience followed at first, pulled along by his momentum, but the rhythm started to feel forced, rushed, almost desperate. Trump was talking a lot but saying less, and the room could feel it. Letterman let it happen. That was the part that confused Trump. Instead of cutting him off, Letterman leaned back and let him keep going, nodding slowly, giving him space, letting him feel comfortable again. Trump mistook that silence for surrender. He relaxed into his seat, smiled wider, stretched his answers longer, acting like the stage was fully his. "See?" Trump said at one point, pointing lightly toward the crowd. "They get it. They know who's in charge." A few people clapped, but it sounded thin, uncertain. Letterman still didn't interrupt. He waited until Trump finally paused to take a breath. Then he leaned forward, calm and controlled, and quietly reset the entire pace of the room. "You don't control this room tonight," Letterman said, not raising his voice, not smiling. The sentence landed heavy. Trump blinked and let out a short laugh, trying to play it off. "Oh, come on, David, don't get sensitive," he said, waving a hand. But Letterman didn't back down. He didn't argue. He just kept eye contact. "You can talk all you want," he added, slow and steady, "but I decide what matters." The crowd shifted in their seats. The cameras cut tighter on Trump's face, catching the first real crack in his confidence. Then Letterman casually dropped the bait, like it was nothing. "By the way," he said, tilting his head slightly, "since you brought up family values earlier, how's Ivanka these days?" The temperature in the room changed instantly. Trump's posture stiffened. His jaw tightened. Letterman didn't wait for Trump to answer. He reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, holding it up in a casual way, like he was about to show a harmless photo. "Let's refresh some memories," he said calmly. The screen lit up. A clip from an old interview with Trump started playing through the studio speakers. It was Trump's younger voice, joking about Ivanka in a way that had once been brushed off as awkward humor. The words echoed in the room, louder than anyone expected. Letterman didn't speak. He didn't interrupt. He let the clip run all the way through. The audience stopped breathing. No laughter, no whispers. Just the sound of Trump's own voice filling the space. When the clip ended, the silence hit hard. It wasn't the polite quiet of a TV studio. It was heavy, uncomfortable, almost suffocating. You could hear the hum of the lights above the stage. Trump let out a forced laugh, sharp and quick. "Come on," he said, waving his hand. "That's old stuff. Everybody jokes. You're digging up ancient history because you've got nothing else." A few nervous chuckles broke out in the crowd, but they died fast. The director cut to a tight camera shot on Trump's face. He blinked once, then again. His smile stayed frozen, but his eyes were working fast. His right hand tightened around the arm of the chair, knuckles pressing into the leather. Letterman leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. His voice dropped lower, slower. "What if it wasn't a joke?" he asked. The words landed like a weight. The studio froze. No movement, no sound. The camera slowly zoomed in, holding on Trump's face as his jaw tightened and his lips pressed together. Then Letterman reached under the desk and slowly lifted a thin brown envelope, the kind that looks ordinary until you realize it isn't supposed to be there. "This arrived anonymously," he said, placing it flat on the desk so the cameras could see it clearly. He slid out several pages and held them up just long enough for the red stamps and official-looking seals to catch the light. The words medical intake and hospital admission were visible from the wide shot. A ripple ran through the audience. Trump leaned forward instantly, face tightening. "That's fake," he snapped, louder than before. "Anybody can print papers. This is desperate. This is garbage." His voice cracked slightly at the end, not enough to sound weak, but enough to sound angry. The camera cut to his clenched jaw, the muscle jumping once as he tried to hold his temper in check. Letterman didn't react to the outburst. He didn't argue back. He calmly adjusted the papers, lining them up neatly on the desk like evidence in a courtroom. "These records list dates, intake notes, and identifiers that match public travel timelines," he said evenly, pointing without touching Trump, keeping the focus on the documents instead of the man. "No accusations yet, just information." The calm tone made Trump's anger look louder by contrast. Behind Letterman, the studio screens flickered to life, showing the outline of a timeline graphic. Blurred, incomplete, just enough to signal what was coming next. Letterman glanced at it briefly, then back to Trump. "We're not done connecting the dots," he said quietly. The audience leaned forward in their seats, realizing the show had officially crossed the line from interview to investigation. Then Letterman turned slightly toward the side of the stage and raised his hand. "I want you to hear this from someone who was there," he said. A former Trump Organization staffer walked into the light, standing stiffly, hands clasped in front of them. The room went quiet fast. The staffer took a breath and spoke carefully. They described being instructed directly by Trump to deliver prenatal vitamins to Ivanka's apartment. Not once, but repeatedly. Always told to keep it quiet. Always told not to log the delivery through normal channels. The word prenatal hung in the air like a siren. Trump shook his head immediately, laughing sharply. "Oh, come on," he said, forcing a grin. "So now I'm running a pharmacy? This is ridiculous." But his laugh didn't spread. No one joined in. The audience just stared, processing what they were hearing. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. Someone in the back whispered loudly enough for nearby seats to hear. The staffer continued, voice steady, explaining how the packages were labeled discreetly and how Trump personally emphasized speed and privacy. Trump leaned forward now, voice rising. "You're lying," he snapped. "You're looking for attention. This is what washed-up employees do." His tone was louder, sharper, more aggressive, but it only made the room colder. Letterman lifted one finger gently, not to silence Trump, but to redirect the moment. Then came the question no one expected. Letterman turned back to the staffer and asked calmly, "What day of the week did you usually make those deliveries?" The staffer blinked, surprised, then answered without hesitation. "Thursdays, always Thursdays, because that's when her driver wasn't around." The studio froze again. Letterman nodded slowly. "And Ivanka left for Europe on a Friday morning," he added quietly, looking back at Trump. The timeline locked into place. The audience gasped. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out right away. For the first time that night, he wasn't controlling the story anymore. Then Letterman stood slightly from his chair and walked a few steps closer to the desk screen, turning his body toward the audience like a lawyer stepping in front of a jury. "Let's slow this down," he said calmly, "because this isn't random." He began laying out Ivanka's public modeling break, the 9-month stretch where she disappeared from major appearances and media events, officially explained as a European work tour. On the screen behind him, dates started to appear, not fully detailed yet, just markers. Letterman pointed lightly as he spoke. "She leaves. She's gone. She's out of sight. And during that same window, we now have hospital intake records, private deliveries of prenatal vitamins, and signed silence agreements." His voice stayed steady, but the weight of each sentence stacked on the last. The room felt tighter with every word. Trump leaned forward aggressively, talking faster now, trying to interrupt the flow. "This is obsession," he snapped. "You're obsessed with my daughter. You've always been bitter. You're twisting coincidences into fantasies." He laughed again, louder this time, trying to pull the audience back to his side. "People travel. People take breaks. That doesn't mean anything." But the speed of his voice gave him away. He wasn't controlling anymore. He was reacting. Letterman didn't look at Trump right away. He kept facing the audience, continuing his slow, deliberate breakdown. "Here's what lines up," he said. "Old clip, on-record comment, anonymous hospital files, private deliveries, the assistant's NDA, and the exact travel window." He paused between each item, letting the silence fill the gaps. Then Letterman turned back to Trump and delivered it like a closing argument. "One piece can be denied," he said quietly. "Two pieces can be argued. But when 5 different sources land on the same timeline, that's not coincidence, that's structure." The audience went silent again. Trump shook his head repeatedly, hands moving faster, tapping the chair, trying to interrupt, trying to laugh, trying to derail the moment. But the trap was already closed. The story wasn't scattered anymore. It was organized, and everyone in the room could feel it. Letterman raised his hand again, slower this time, and the movement alone made the room tense up. "There's one more voice," he said quietly. From the side of the stage, Ivanka's former assistant stepped forward. She didn't rush. Her steps were careful, heavy, like each one carried weight. When she reached the chair, she hesitated, hands shaking slightly, eyes dropping to the floor before lifting to the cameras. "I signed papers," she finally said, voice low and uneven. "Documents that said I could never talk about anything connected to Baron's birth." The words came out slow, almost painful. You could hear someone gasp sharply in the front row. Trump's head snapped toward her, eyes wide for a split second before tightening with anger. The studio froze in a strange collective stillness. No whispers, no movement. Just hundreds of people realizing they were watching something real unravel in front of them. The assistant swallowed hard and added more detail, the part that made it impossible to brush aside. "It was in a private conference room on the 18th floor of Trump Tower," she said. "Late evening, curtains closed, no windows open. 2 lawyers were there. The papers were already printed. I was told to sign quickly and leave." Her voice cracked on the last sentence. The room felt heavier, like the air itself had thickened. Letterman didn't interrupt. He let the silence sit. Let the image sink in. Trump tried to laugh again, but it came out sharp and forced. "Oh, please," he said loudly. "Now we're doing emotional theater? This is scripted. This is fake drama." But his voice didn't carry the same authority anymore. It sounded strained. He leaned forward, opening his mouth to keep talking, to take the floor back, but Letterman spoke first. "You didn't deny the NDA," he said calmly. Trump froze for half a second. He blinked twice, fast. The audience caught it. The cameras caught it. Trump didn't immediately fire back. He looked cornered. Then Letterman reached beneath the desk and lifted a thick folder, heavier than the others, the kind that looks important before anyone even opens it. "These didn't come from here," he said calmly. "They came from Switzerland." The studio reacted instantly, a wave of murmurs rolling through the crowd. Letterman opened the folder and pulled out several pages, holding them up just enough for the cameras to catch the bold headers, foreign clinic logos, and stamped signatures. "Private clinic. Alternate registration name. Appointment records tied to the same European window you just heard about," he continued, reading off dates, intake codes, and follow-up visit notes. Trump shot upright in his chair. "This is insane," he snapped, pointing at the papers. "You can fake foreign documents. Anybody can fake this junk." But Letterman didn't look at him. He kept reading. Trump tried again, louder this time, talking over him. "This is illegal. You're spreading lies on national television. You're finished after tonight." His voice echoed across the studio, sharp and angry. Letterman didn't flinch. He didn't pause. He didn't acknowledge the interruption. He simply kept going, listing appointment intervals, referencing matching travel dates, calmly stacking facts like bricks. The power shift was visible. Trump was shouting. Letterman was building. The cameras cut between Trump's red face and Letterman's steady posture, making the contrast impossible to ignore. The audience sat frozen, barely blinking, watching the story tighten into something solid. Then Letterman stopped speaking. He closed the folder slowly and placed it flat on the desk. He didn't say a word. 5 seconds passed, then 10. The silence felt louder than Trump's shouting ever had. You could hear chairs creak as people leaned forward. Trump opened his mouth to fill the gap, but Letterman lifted one finger gently, not aggressive, just firm, signaling that this moment wasn't his. When Letterman finally spoke, his voice was quiet but heavy. "Europe travel records, clinic files, witness testimony, NDA silence agreements," he said slowly. "They all land on the same timeline." He looked directly at Trump. "That's not rumor anymore. That's alignment." The room stayed silent. No applause, no laughter. Letterman stood still behind the desk, hands resting flat on the surface, eyes locked on Trump. The studio felt frozen in time. Then he spoke, slow and deliberate, making sure every word landed. "If this is fake," he said, pausing, letting the silence stretch, "then show the truth." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't add drama. He didn't attack. He simply placed the burden back where it belonged. The sentence hung in the air like a challenge no one could ignore. The audience didn't clap. No one laughed. Nobody even shifted in their seat. It was the kind of quiet that makes everything feel heavier. Trump snapped. He leaned forward hard, face flushed, voice sharp and loud. "You're a washed-up host," he shouted. "This is what you do now? You chase fake scandals because you're desperate for attention." He pointed across the desk, jabbing the air. "I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue this network. Everyone involved is going to hear from my lawyers." His words spilled out fast, overlapping each other, fueled by anger instead of control. But the more he talked, the smaller he sounded. The power he walked in with was gone. What remained was noise. The moment the red on-air light clicked off, the room didn't relax. It got heavier. Trump stayed seated, staring forward, jaw tight, hands locked together like he was holding something in. Nobody rushed to speak to him. Stage assistants froze in place, unsure who should move first. A producer whispered urgently into a headset while another crew member avoided eye contact altogether. The audience filed out slowly, not chatting, not laughing, just walking in quiet clusters, phones already in their hands. Backstage monitors replayed the last 30 seconds on loop. Letterman's line, Trump's outburst, the long silent stare. Over and over like a warning signal. Outside the studio walls, the explosion hit instantly. Clips flooded social media within minutes. Hashtags shot to the top of trending lists. News alerts flashed on phones across the country. Letterman confronts Trump live. Shocking evidence segment sparks debate. Late-night interview turns into national firestorm. Comment sections moved faster than anyone could scroll. Some people defended Trump, others tore into him, but almost everyone was sharing the same clip, the silence, the stare, the line that flipped the room. The internet wasn't arguing about jokes anymore. It was arguing about power, truth, and who lost control on live TV. Trump went into damage control mode before the night even ended. A statement dropped online calling the segment fake, staged, and a desperate attack by a failed host. Minutes later, another post followed, louder, angrier, promising lawsuits and total exposure of everyone involved. He jumped into interviews, repeating the same talking points, denying everything, accusing Letterman of obsession. But something had changed. He wasn't setting the narrative anymore. He was chasing it. Every response felt reactive, rushed, defensive. And the more he talked, the more people replayed the moment he lost control on camera. By the next morning, media panels weren't focused on Trump's insults. They were dissecting Letterman's strategy. Analysts broke down the pacing, the silence, the slow stacking of evidence. They called it a control reversal. Not loud confrontation, not shouting. Just pressure built piece by piece. The phrase control versus evidence started circulating everywhere. People noticed how Trump tried to dominate with volume and personality, while Letterman stayed calm and methodical. One side performed power, the other applied it. Online, viewers turned into investigators. They paused frames, compared dates, rewatched the delivery testimony, replayed the NDA confession, and lined it up with the timeline shown on screen. Threads exploded with breakdowns, charts, and side-by-side clips. Some debated details, others focused on the bigger picture. How the interview shifted from entertainment into something that felt like a public reckoning. What stood out most wasn't just the claims. It was the moment Trump stopped leading and started reacting. That was the real change. He wasn't steering the conversation anymore. He was responding to a story that had already taken shape without him. Every new statement Trump released only fueled more analysis. Every denial triggered another wave of replays. Instead of shutting the story down, he kept reopening it. The power dynamic flipped in real time. For the first time in a long while, Trump wasn't controlling the spotlight. The spotlight was controlling him. And that's why the moment stayed with people long after the studio emptied and the lights went dark. That night didn't end a career. It ended control. If this moment shocked you, wait until you see what happens next. Stories like this don't end on one stage. They echo far beyond the cameras. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us who you think really controlled that room and what part of this confrontation hit you the hardest. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next explosive showdown, the next hidden truth, or the next moment when power gets challenged live.